What is up, everybody? Thank you for coming back to another episode on the channel. My name is Slayer. So today we're playing RuneScape. As you can see, I have not played RuneScape in a very long time, but today I actually want to talk about something that should help new players, and it is about different builds in the game. Now, there is a lot of different builds. And to be honest, I don't have time to go through all of them because there is so many. It would take me an hour plus to get through all of them. We'll be doing 3 bullet points of pros and cons for each build, but these are my opinions, so go ahead and argue in the comments about how wrong I am. Anyway, the builds we'll be talking about is a 1 defense peer, a barrows peer, and of course the best build ever, a Zerker. Now these are the 3 main builds that you usually hear about if someone's not making a main. Now there is something called a skiller, but they just fish all day, so we're not going to even talk about them. Let's get into the first build we're going to be talking about, which is the 1 defense peer. Now, 1 defense peers are basically the degenerates of the RuneScape world, but they are still one of the best PvP builds in the game. You can also PVM on them if you are actually a very sweaty RuneScape player and know what you're doing. Now, how you level them is exactly how the name sounds. You keep them at 1 defense, you level all your other stats. Now, they do max out around 83-ish combat depending on your attack and prayer level. Let's talk about the pros and cons of the 1 defense build. Biggest pro that they have going for them is they are the glass cannon of the RuneScape world. Low combat, high damage. Secondly, you don't have to quest them. You don't have to really pay attention to them either. You can just go AFK on them while you actually play a good character. And thirdly, super cheap to maintain. If you die a bunch, who cares? You're only risking like 100k because you're a peer, so... Of course, the biggest con is that 1 defense. Given enough time, a freaking chicken would kill you. Secondly, they're not a main. No matter how much you try, these characters are very difficult to be a main unless you absolutely love PvP. I would recommend this being your secondary character instead of your primary character. Lastly, they're the most hated build in this game. You know, I have actually lost friends on this game just because they know I have a peer. But this is what makes a peer a peer. Peers are PvP machines. They are amazing for PvP. They basically suck at everything else. But if you do decide to make a peer your primary character, one thing I would recommend is get into a good clan chat. Because since peers are very disliked, there is a lot of amazing clan chats just for peers that you will be very well accepted in. They will teach you stuff. There is peers that do bossing, so if you want to get into that sort of crowd bossing with peers, they will teach you the mechanics. They will help you quite a bit. Now let's get into the next character, which is the Zerker. Now I am very biased about a Zerker. If it sounds like I'm being a huge fanboy of Zerkers, it's because I am. I have created like 6 or 7 of them in total, so I love my Zerkers. In all seriousness, though, Zerkers are the best of both worlds because you can PVM, PvP, you can use them as mains. They are basically the best of both worlds. Like my Iron Zerker, I PVM on him all the time, and I have no issues with it. What makes a Zerker? Basically, it is 45 defense, and you get it from questing because you had to have barrows gloves on a Zerker. If you don't have barrows gloves on a Zerker, you're basically screwing up the whole account. The max combat for a Zerker ranges quite a bit just because some people PvP on them, some people PVM on them. They can range anywhere from like 93 all the way up to 105 combat depending on the levels that they have. Let's get into the pros and cons of the Zerker though. The first one and the biggest one is a Zerker can be a main. You do not need a main character with a Zerker. You can do everything on a Zerker that you can do a main. You can do bossing. My main, the RL Slayer, was a Zerker for the first 5 years of his life, and I did Cox. I did Godward with him. I did all sorts of stuff. And the hardest part is actually finding people that are willing to take you as a Zerker. But if you can find the group, you know, go do it, because bossing on a Zerker is really fun. I'm actually making another Zerker that's a non-Iron Man Zerker that I can do this bossing with other people again because I enjoyed it as a Zerker. I don't really enjoy it as much as on a main. Secondly, they're one of the lower level builds that can actually use vengeance and PKing, so you can learn how to venge PK without risking a whole lot of money as well. I know I said I had 3 pros for each, but I mean, this is what you can do on Zerker. You can use it as a main and venge PK. That's really about it. Now, there's quite a few cons on Zerker. First of all, you can't use certain weapons, especially if you're trying to keep your attack low, like whips. You can't use spears at all. You can't even try to use them because they'll level your defense. You get destroyed by tanks in mid levels, especially when you're PKing, just because of the combat bracket. You are at the point where you'll start fighting them. They are a weaker version of the mid level. The mid level can use Barrow's gear and everything like that. You have a hard time finding teams for raids if you're trying to raid on a Zerker, just because people don't want to bring such a low level. You're using an excessive amount of food and prayer just training Slayer, just because you're getting hit all the time and you basically always had to have your prayer up or constantly just go through food. You have a hard time getting more than 2 to 3 boss kills in an inventory just because you're getting hit so much. This is very prominent in God Wars Dungeon, unless you're using a niche method where you run around a room with like a bofa or something like that. Very high quest requirement, at minimum 175 quest points. Now, if you do those quests wrong, you will ruin the character. If you do the correct quests, but you take the wrong rewards, you will destroy the character. You can destroy the character by leveling it incorrectly, and all sorts of other ways that you can just destroy this character. They are very fragile in the leveling process, but once you get past the leveling process, it's a little bit easier. But I would still recommend you to build a Zerker for one specific reason, and it's for my own gain. I want to see more Zerkers. There's not many Zerkers left in the game, and a lot of them are turning into mains or mid levels instead of staying a Zerker. But let's get into the next one, which is the Barrows Pier or the mid level. Now, mid level / Barrows Piers, they max out at around 107 or so combat. Now, as I stated previously, they're basically a better version of the Zerker. I have never built one for personal reasons. I do not like them. But yeah, the only con that they share with the Zerker is the questing. You had to do a bunch of questing. Other than that, if you want to build a med level, go for it. You can't mess them up, really. But I would recommend, if you're building a med level, might as well just build a main, because they're almost basically a main at that point. But yeah, that's about all that I have to say about these characters. If you have any questions, leave it in the comments. If you have stuff that I forgot, leave it in the comments. Other than that, I'm going to hop off of here, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace.